No, I'm not a writer.
Okay.
Something is about to break.
Well, hey everybody, welcome to About to Break. I'm your host, Taylor Hughes, and we are recording this right now in Nashville, Tennessee.
Woohoo!
And across the table from me is Jason Michaels.
Man.
Thanks for doing this.
This is cool. It is cool.
Oh, this is really cool. I got to thank you because you brought me in to work the House of Cards this week, which I'm sure we'll talk about. But
absolutely,
we're sitting right now in what do we call this? The Carter Room?
Carter Showroom. Yeah.
This is gorgeous. It's this beautiful, what is it, 60-seat theater?
Yeah, 58, 60 seats, yeah.
And in the backdrop of the stage, I mean, picture a vintage vaudeville, old school vaudeville stage. The backdrop is a poster of Carter the Great from probably, what, the 20s? When would that have been? I should know these things. I don't know.
I'm not as good. I love magic history, but I'm not as good at I'm telling you what all the facts are.
Yeah. Right now I'm losing geek points with some of the listeners, but it's an actual original like 8-sheet poster. So picture like 8 huge posters put together to make one, and it's just cool. I'm in magic geek heaven.
Every time I walk in this room, I look at that and I think that was the billboard of the day. That is how they knew.
Oh yeah. You'd be driving down some dusty highway and there'd be a tent and this massive sign. I mean, you would have never seen anything like that.
Oh no.
It's so cool. Well, we'll get more to where we're at right now, but I want to talk a little bit about your story.
Okay.
And how you got started in entertainment. And I know that you're an author and a speaker, and you also do magic as well.
I have too many interests. Too many interests.
Do you find that you have a hard time balancing those different interests, or?
Sometimes I think, I'm not spending as much time as necessary in order. Like I think, if I was just 100% focused on just selling my book as an author and just getting that out there, then I would probably sell more copies of it. But I'm happy with where I am on that. And if I were just focused solely on magic, or if I were just focused solely on, speaking, but the simple fact of the matter is everything that I do, I try to sort of weave together so that everything complements each other.
Totally.
So, but, what were you saying? I think you were saying something like how I got started. Is that?
This is the Jason Michaels episode. So let's take it back to. Let's go.
Is
back
anybody
to
interested in that episode?
Absolutely. What was life like growing up? Do you have brothers, sisters, only child? What was your?
It was perfect. I mean, I was blessed. I was very fortunate. I grew up in a household with a brother who's 3.5 years younger than me, and then about 10 years after I came around, my sister came around.
Oh,
and so
wow!
There's a
good spread there.
Decade there.
Yeah.
So I was fortunate to have both my mom and my dad in my life. They were together, and they still are together. And I just grew up in a great situation in Middle Tennessee.
Okay.
And I mean, I didn't really have anybody in entertainment in my life. That wasn't part of it. I mean, my grandfather was very pivotal in my life. But really just because he was a really cool guy. And he would do little puzzles and things like that. From time to time, he would help me with my science project, and we would like make a doorbell out of like a battery and a door buzzer and like some wire. But but we didn't, and from what I'm told, people said, I had some uncles and some other people who would might do a little magic trick from time to time. And I hate to say this, but none of it made an impact on me enough to
where you remember that was, I saw a magic trick and then I wanted to do that. That wasn't
right. So I think you would say, whatever the definition of normal is, but I had a pretty normal upbringing. I mean, as idyllic as anybody can hope to have.
Yeah.
So, but it wasn't necessarily easy.
Okay.
Because I have Tourette syndrome.
Yeah.
So that's it's genetic, and it's something that you just you just have it. And so I would I would have these twitches. I would have these, what they call tics, which are uncontrollable movements, or sometimes they're uncontrollable vocal noises. And with my Tourette's, and with a lot of people's Tourette's, there's also other things that come along with it. Some people have OCD. Some people have all sorts of stuff. And I think I have a touch of OCD in there as well. So, yeah, it's the type of thing where you're doing these uncontrollable things. My first memory of that was maybe when I was, I'm pretty sure I was around 6 or 7 years old, and I was in my dad's car and we were driving to school, and I was just constantly rubbing my chin against my collarbone. And it felt like I'd been doing it for days. My neck was starting to get irritated and raw. And, we didn't know what it was, because back then, I'm in my 40s now, but back then people didn't really know what Tourette's is. I mean, it was a little bit, but it was just pretty an odd thing. And there weren't a lot of doctors who knew exactly what the problem was. So I saw different doctors, and it wasn't until I was about 13 years old that we finally saw a doctor who said, here's what your deal is.
Oh, wow. So for like 7 years, you're just dealing with different aspects of it and not really knowing what's going on. Yeah.
Again, I'll be very honest and very forthcoming about it. I mean, I had great parents who were very there to support me. I never... I think that most of the Tourette's, the really, I don't want to call it torturous, but some of the stuff, when it's uncontrollable movements and you're doing this stuff, it's repetitive, it happens quickly, it's uncontrollable, just comes out of nowhere. When that type of thing happens and you're just doing it over and over and over and over again, it feels like torture. And it feels like you can't get past, you just want to get past the day. I mean, much less get, looking long term or anything like that. So, but my parents were awesome, and were always there to support me and let me know that I was loved. And I mean, I was just really fortunate like that. But yeah, anytime you're dealing with something that you don't understand or that you have the answers for, very frustrating, very frustrating. I mean, it's hard to... And the thing about Tourette's, people don't understand. They have a hard time understanding when I say uncontrollable. It just kind of comes out of nowhere. It's not like it's something that I'm thinking about I can control. It just kind of happens. And so it comes out of nowhere and then it kind of vanishes. Yeah.
And there's not like certain triggers or things that you go this, or is that the case?
A little bit. There's a little bit of that. I can listen to certain types of music and all of a sudden I have way more twitches than normal. They say, I've read a lot about, and I believe that certain types of foods, maybe food allergies, things like that. My mom has pointed out that anytime I have any sort of a sickness, like especially with strep, like if I get sick, like it's after I get better. It's weird. That's so when
not
the tics,
not during the illness, but when it goes away.
It's like it's sort of suppressed because my immune system is messed up, and then as soon as I get more or less back to normal, they come out like 3 times as bad.
Wow.
So yeah. So there's all of that comes with that. And of course, when you're a kid,
right, you're 13 years old and you finally find out what's going on.
Right.
And at the same time, I'm sure you're not excited to find this out. I mean,
well, yeah, again, you're in your own world.
Right.
And I mean, it's just like, for somebody to say this is what it is, there is the relief of understanding, okay, this is something that they can recognize,
right?
And that there are some treatments, although the treatments back then and still pretty much now really kind of suck, to be honest with you. It's like there's just not great treatments. There are some better treatments now, but especially back then, it was like, well, you can try this medication or this medication or this medication. The problem with that, though, is that medication takes a while. You have to cycle into it. So you start off with a low dosage and build your way up, and you're supposed to watch and tell when it's helping you. But the problem with that is that Tourette's syndrome waxes and wanes. So sometimes it's worse than it is other times naturally.
So you're not sure, is this just a natural season where it's not as challenging, or is it the medication, or?
Right.
Oh, that's awful.
So it's severely frustrating.
And then if you find out that medication isn't working, then you have to wean yourself off of it and work on it in the next. Wow, buddy.
Yep. And so that's the frustration. And that is why, like, and nowadays I love talking to kids or young people or families that are dealing with Tourette syndrome, because I can maybe give them a little sense of hope and let them know that even though it kind of feels hopeless when it is you and you are dealing with it and you are doing things that are, you just feel, I hate to continue using the word torture, but there's this aspect of like, you're just doing the same thing. And I've known of people who, you know, sometimes the movements are large, sometimes they're big, sometimes they're really distracting. I've known people who've thrown muscles out, and so it can be painful. Yeah. So it's not just like a simple little twitch. Right. Sometimes it can be something that like is quite painful and damaging to you. And so I love talking to people, especially young people, and letting them know that there is some hope on the other side, or at the very least, maybe they can look at sort of some of the things that I've done and say, well, maybe I can do that too, because I hope that I can give them the message that they too can do amazing things, and that the frustration that they're dealing with in that very moment, it too shall pass. Yeah. It may not be easy. It may not be simple to deal with. It may be brutal. Right. But, you know, we can get by. But that, of course, to me, I think everybody's dealing with something. Oh, everybody is. I mean, and sometimes the challenges are more visible than others, but everybody, whether it be emotionally or relationally, it's amazing to me. And I'm sure people, as they're hearing that, you know, he's an author and he's a magician and he's a speaker and someone who spends a majority of their life with a microphone on stage in front of people. I'm sure that kids growing up who are dealing with Tourette syndrome would say, I'm just disqualified from that. I can't do that because, you know, how did that get into play with you? When was the first time you got in front of a group and did something? And it was, I enrolled in speech and drama class when I was a junior in high school, because I don't remember the exact reason, but I think that I just had in my mind, you know, you see the movies and you're like, I want to be like that. I want people to look up to me. Yeah. And I don't. Sometimes, and sometimes you think back on your life and you look and you try to say, okay, what was the intention? What was the desire? Yeah. Right. And I think that there's a little bit of the fact that if I go out for a school play, which is ultimately what happened, and I get up there and people laugh and they applaud for something that I chose to do instead of pointing me out for something that I have no control over. Yeah. So I think I just wanted people to like me for, you know, something other than something I had no control over. This goes back to, you know, so many friends that are comics would say a similar, you know, desire of, as a kid, maybe they were made fun of, or they dealt with, you know, not being popular, or and there's something about being able to choose to put yourself in a position to be laughed at. Yeah. And to be laughed with, rather than, you know, it's interesting. It kind of puts the power in a different position. Absolutely. No doubt about it. Yeah. What was that like for, I mean, you said you had very encouraging parents. Mm-hmm. Were they ever at all like, maybe not drama, maybe that's not the thing for you? No, they always were just like, I think they just kind of let me do what I wanted to do, and they were willing to. I mean, there were certain things they didn't want me to, like they didn't want me to play football. Yeah, no football. but I think that was for other reasons. I think that was because getting you to do magic tricks is the best cure for not playing sports. I mean, that's right. But yeah, no, they were always very very supportive. So I go out for the school play, and. So I'm in the speech and drama class. They announced there were going to be auditions for a school play. I go out for the school play and I get a role. And now I find myself up on stage, and it's exhilarating. You know, my goodness. And it's, you know, it's this experience where you're saying things. Now, granted, it's a script. You've read lines, you're reading lines, you're delivering lines somebody else wrote, but you're the one saying them. Right. And it's your delivery, the way that you deliver your tone of voice, everything like that, and then you deliver a line, and then all of a sudden the audience laughs, or it's, oh my gosh, you want to talk about a drug? Yeah, right. That's a drug right there. Oh, totally. It's I've heard people say that speakers are magicians or comedians, that anyone who's doing a stage performance, that we're all musicians, and our instrument is the audience. There's something about being able to say a word and it draws people in, or it gives them a release, or it's a pretty powerful moment. It's incredibly powerful. And I I studied a lot of theater. And so and I got into magic after I had gotten into acting. It wasn't long after, but it was after. And so, but I was studied acting really seriously. And so like, I love it all. I love a performance that draws an audience in and makes them cry just as much as I love an audience that laughs the whole time.
Right.
I mean, it's a very different experience.
Totally.
But being able to share a message, as an actor, you share somebody else's message.
Right.
But as I became a magician and little by little came into my own, I was able to, within a certain amount, I was able to say the things I wanted to say.
Right.
So I could write my scripts and I could share with, my audience the things that I wanted them to walk away with. So.
Oh, that's beautiful, man.
So, yeah.
That's great. When you started doing, so was this like after college you just started doing magic shows, or when did you start doing that professionally as far as going out and doing gigs?
So I did, I got into magic in high school, and a similar time when to the getting in the school play. And I just it was a hobby. It was just something fun. I learned some card tricks, some simple card tricks, and then some sleight of hand card tricks. And then I went to college and I was studying the stuff that theater major, and all of that stuff in college. And, but I did magic as a hobby and I did it for fun. And, I got done with school and I got a job working for Brett Daniels, the illusionist.
Wow. Yeah.
So it was about a year afterwards, and I saw I was reading Magic Magazine, and there was an advertisement.
Yeah.
And it said that Brett Daniels was looking for stage technicians for his show in Tunica, Mississippi. And I'm from Nashville. Tunica's only about 4 hours away. So I contacted them, sent them a resume, and they said, hey, come see the show.
Yeah.
And come meet with us, and we want to ask you some questions. And so it was a good fit.
Yeah.
So I went down there. They offered me a job like on a Monday, and less than a week later, I had quit my job, bought a new car, put all my stuff in there, and took off to Tunica. Yeah, it was like the greatest thing ever. So,
that's wild.
So I worked for him for a year and a half in Tunica, and then I actually worked with Brett for years afterwards, doing different things, traveling and doing some things like that. I would work with him on different projects, and but really my personal first experiences, other than doing like my sister's birthday party or something like that. Other than that, I definitely did not follow the typical path. I just said, all right, I'm going to be a magician now. And so
I love it.
I wrote a script.
Yeah.
And I mean, I'm coming from an acting world. So what did I do? I write a story. I write a script. And then the next thing I do was I contact some theaters and I say, how much does it cost to rent your space?
Wait a minute. You didn't just buy the magic trick and then, say with the instructions that they give you of this is the word you say while you do the thing. That's what a lot of magicians do.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it didn't happen from time to time, because sometimes you just see something and you're like, oh, that's great. And especially as a young magician, you just do that. But
the idea that you said, oh, I'm going to be a magician, I need a script, I need to write a show, that's pretty brilliant.
Well, I mean, I was just approaching it from a different point of view.
Right.
So, and so I rented out a theater and I did the promotion that I could figure out how to do. I mean, it was all just me figuring out. Yeah. And so that's how I started. And it took me a while to learn the business of it. But I mean, I've done a little bit of everything, man, from, four-walling theaters to working in restaurants, doing strolling magic to tables, to working the college market. I mean, corporate events. I mean, I've done a little bit of everything, and it's been a serious education the entire time. That's actually probably the best advice I can give anybody who's interested in doing magic is continually educate yourself.
Oh yeah. And a lot of it is you learn something from every show and every venue and every type of client.
Yeah.
And it's always funny when you go somewhere and you're like, oh, I'm going to do, you can't just, you've got to really tailor it to the venue and to the audience and understand where you're working.
Understand where you're working, understand who the audience is and what their expectations are.
Right.
And there's different ways to do it. There are some people who say, oh, you plan out a show and you do your show no matter what. And I get it. Yeah. If you go see a Broadway show, they're not going to tailor the show for that audience.
Right.
But then there's, when you're working for XYZ company,
Right.
and you walk in there, and
You're surprising them that they didn't know they were going to be an audience.
Right.
You know?
Right. So, and in those type of circumstances, I think it's appropriate that if you look at these people and say, oh, this thing I was planning is definitely not going to work here,
right,
to have a plan B so you can substitute something, and so that you are creating something a little bit more based on their specific needs.
That's great. That's really good. Now, I know you wrote a book.
I wrote a book.
We talked a little bit about this, but I hear people all the time say, I feel like I should write a book and I don't. Or there's that whole thing of everyone's got a book inside of them. You know?
Yeah.
What did you do to go from, and some of this is personal for me because it's like I've got some things that I've started working on but haven't done. What did you do to actually go from, did you have an idea initially of, hey, I want to tell my story or I want to write this book, or where did that action of actually you're going to become an author come from?
So by this point, I had transitioned into speaking, and I was speaking about telling my story about my experience with Tourette syndrome and how my experiences, the lessons that I have learned on how to succeed and overcome what I call quote unquote impossible challenges.
Yeah.
I was talking about that. I was doing those talks for groups, and I had a friend, or still have a friend, and he for quite a while he would say, "Man, you got to write a book. You got to write a book. You got to tell your story." And I was like, "Dude, I don't have there's no story to tell. Why would I tell a story? Nobody wants to read this." But as I started talking and started getting feedback from people who, would come up to me afterwards and they would say, "Oh my gosh," and they would share their experience of what I had just shared with them and how they took it in.
Yeah.
From that point, I started realizing, well, maybe I should write a book. And there were two reasons. Reason number one, because I knew that if I wrote a book that I would be able to reach some people that I might not speak in front of. And that maybe this book could help some people. I don't know who's going to read the book. The book is out there.
Yeah.
People are going to get that book and they'll, I hope, be touched by a message in a way that inspires them, that gives them some hope, that helps maybe even motivate them a little bit. The other thing was writing the book was an exercise in making sure that my story that I was telling live was as good as it could be. Because it forced me to relive it. I can write a speech, but when you write a book, you have to really dive.
You're committing to this is the presentation.
You're trying. I mean, as far as when you're writing about your life, you're trying to remember all these moments, and you're trying to figure out what goes into the book. So by writing the book, I really was able to refresh in my memory and figure out how the best live presentation would be.
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. Because, I mean, especially there is that thing, too, when it's your story. It's one thing if you're writing a short story or a film, and it's another thing when you're writing the story of your life.
Sure.
You want to make sure, I want to tell the story about Bob unless I get his permission. Or is that really how that happened? And
yeah.
Start doing a little research on yourself to see what it was all about.
Oh yeah, and you want to share something that is real, is true, and So I think writing the book for me was, in a sense, it was a little bit cathartic, and it kind of, because I'll be honest with you, I'm the last person I ever thought I would talk about Tourette syndrome until I'm in, like I said, I'm in my early 30s, but until I was in my mid 30s, I had no interest in talking about it. I've been embarrassed by Tourette syndrome my whole life.
So when you were doing shows, that wasn't part of the presentation. You would never talk about that. And was that a conversation you would have to have with clients or things? No, you would just go out, because when you go on stage, and this might be amazing to people, but when you go on stage, no one can tell that you would have.
Right.
Why is that? Is it just you found something for you that when you're in that zone, or?
Yeah. For a while I just thought, oh, this is just the way that it is for me. What I've learned a little bit is that there is a certain, like you said, a zone. There is a certain level of focus that happens.
Right.
And then when you are that, I call it hyper-focus, but when you are that focused and that locked in on something, the Tourette's doesn't come out. Because for me, a lot of the Tourette's comes out when I get tired.
Okay.
So when I'm tired and my body is kind of run down, like if I don't get enough sleep, if I'm traveling and my travel schedule screws me up or stuff like that, my Tourette's is a lot worse because my body is fatigued. And like, even like when we're talking about being sick, as you heal up and like all of that, that's when the Tourette's comes out more. But when I'm on stage, I'm massively focused because, again, I don't want to be embarrassed. I don't want to be embarrassed. I'm super focused on what I'm doing. The Tourette's is suppressed for the most part. It still comes out a little bit, but people who have Tourette's also learn how to mask the Tourette's in everyday movement. So I might have a tic, but you may not realize I had a tic because I do something else that makes it look like it's an everyday movement. But yeah, so I mean, I would just go out and do my thing. And it wasn't something I ever wanted to talk about. I did not want somebody to look at me and go, oh, look at him. Isn't he such a good magician for somebody with a disability? I never wanted any of that. I just wanted to be good at what I did.
The show to stand on its own.
Yes.
And when did you decide? I mean, was this all of a sudden someone asked you to speak somewhere, or you decided, hey, maybe I'll tell my story? Or did you ease into that? Or when did you go from doing magic shows without any personal story to I'm going to go and tell my story without any magic?
Well, telling my story without any magic really probably happened when I did, the transition started when I did my TEDx for UT Chattanooga.
Yeah.
And that was... well, maybe that's 5 years ago. I'd have to go back and look, but it was a little while ago. And that was one of those things where it was like, okay, I'm going to focus on this. This is where I'm going to take this next.
Yeah.
But you know, that's a scary moment because as a magician, I get to put on a mask. I get to be a magician. And when all of a sudden you're talking about yourself, I never had any stage fright. Put me in a play, put me in front of people. It's not that I wouldn't get nervous occasionally, but it was never something that
it wasn't like debilitating.
Yeah. Oh no,
no,
not
still
at all.
were
I was fine.
Yeah.
Put me up in front of an audience and say, we want you to talk about yourself. All of a sudden it was terrifying.
Wow.
Because now it is all about me and I have to stand up in front of you and get naked.
Yeah, and you know, if you do a magic trick and someone doesn't like it, you can just say, "Oh, they don't like magic," or "They didn't like that trick." But when it's just you,
it's like, "Oh, they don't like me."
They don't like me. You know?
Yeah.
Wow, buddy. So you were doing a TEDx talk, and that was kind of the first time that you really were like, "I'm going to go tell my story."
Yeah, I had spoken, my friend, Stephen Bargatze, had convinced me that I needed to talk on it. And I had talked on it some. Yeah. I would do magic and then talk about it a little bit, but I was really just doing that for groups that occasionally he would say, oh, hey, here's an event that I can't do, and they want somebody to tell their story. Because Stephen has an unbelievably compelling story, really powerful. And when he goes and talks and entertains, and then occasionally he would give me something and say, "Hey, no, but I want you to do this gig. They need somebody. They need you, but you have to tell your story." And so he kind of suckered me into it. Yeah. But that's what got me comfortable. That's got me comfortable doing it. And so the TEDx thing was like the drawing the line in the sand, where it's like the whole presentation is about living with and dealing with Tourette syndrome. Yeah. And your story in it. Yeah. How was the reception? I mean, when you did that, how did you feel afterward? It was exhilarating. It was nerve-wracking. Yeah. I prepared very hard for it. I'll tell you something you shouldn't do. So I did something you definitely should not do. I did something more or less for the first time I'd ever done in front of an audience at my TEDx. Now, as you know, TEDx is like, these things are like, they live online forever. Yeah, forever. So once you put it out there, so I know, for number one, they're live streaming it. Number two, they're recording it and it's going to go up on their website or whatever. Right. I had this idea. I knew I had written the speech and I knew I had to find a way to open it. And I had this idea in my head of, I want to do the straitjacket. I want to escape from a straitjacket. Yeah. And I want it to be a visual metaphor of what it feels like to have Tourette syndrome. Yeah. It is feeling like you're trapped inside your own body. Wow. So I'm going to be trapped in front of everybody at the very beginning. And so now part of escaping from a straitjacket in a show, part of the reason that works is because you bring somebody up and you have them strap you in, and everybody sees you being strapped into that, and they understand why it's so difficult.
Yeah.
Well, I literally they introduced me, and I walked out on stage in a straitjacket. So nobody saw me put the straitjacket on. They don't even know if it's a real straitjacket. They don't know anything.
Right.
But the context of it, the presentation of it, the very real struggle of it, it absolutely sort of hypnotized the audience, and I got a huge reaction. And that is, like I said, I wouldn't recommend doing that.
Try something,
like, I'll just do this for the first time in a super high stress situation. But I have been on stage for a long time.
Right.
And I did know that this is probably a good idea.
Yeah.
This is probably going to work.
Yeah.
But so that was really like I said, that's where I drew the line in the sand. That's where I said, I did it. And then people were talking to me afterwards, and it was this, wow, people were coming up to me and saying, man, I'm so glad you shared that. And that is when people start really talking about how my story has somehow spoken to them.
Right.
That's, you know what that's like? That's like that same applause that you get being on stage, except it's like you getting this unbelievable, like it's humbling.
Yeah.
Like, first off, it's humbling. First off, you're like, you kind of can't believe that you talking about what I just said. That's what you took away from it and how it applies to your life. It's almost like shocking.
Right. Totally.
But you also start thinking to yourself, wow, I can help people.
Yeah. And now, having done years of magic with never telling your story,
right? And
now having this kind of other way of presenting, what has that done for you personally? I know it's impacted the audience for them to hear. Yeah. But what has that journey been like for you? Because I know you said before you never wanted to talk about it.
I never wanted to talk about it. And I was intent. I was very serious about never wanting to talk about it. So there is a side of me that is still amazed every time somebody wants me to come and talk about it. And there's another side of me that is amazed that it touches people. Like, it's interesting because I will occasionally get in front of an audience, and I have to sort of beat this back where I'll stand up and look at the audience right before I walk on stage, and I'll say to myself, they don't want to hear this. They don't want to hear some sob story. They don't want to hear how your life was tough or whatever.
Yeah.
But then I have to beat that back, and I have to remember that I've done it enough in front of enough audiences that that's not how they view it. They don't go, oh, woe is me. What they end up is they see this person who is this strong person who has been able to accomplish some pretty, in other people's eyes, some pretty impressive things.
Right.
And then ultimately what ends up happening, and what I pray ends up happening every single time I talk, is that my talk is able to speak to somebody else who is dealing with something that feels overwhelming, something that feels like they can't deal with it, and that it somehow touches them in a way that I couldn't have touched them any other way. I couldn't have done magic and gotten to that spot in their soul. This is the only way that it was. And I think of it as a blessing. I think of it as my opportunity to connect with somebody and give them something, maybe a message of hope. Maybe it is just literally to let them know that they're not alone in the world.
Right.
And so that's why I'm so in love with going out and sharing it now.
Yeah.
So
it's so encouraging that was something you personally were, I don't know if afraid was the word, if you or just had not had a desire to do it.
Right.
It's incredible to see the impact that's had for other people, but it's also incredible to see what it's done for you and the joy that you've been able to have being a part of other people's lives in that interesting way.
Well, it's I think we ultimately, if we're given the opportunity, I think pretty much all of us would like to be able to help somebody else out.
Yeah.
Because of when you do that, when you help somebody else out, certain things happen to yourself in your mind, the way that you see yourself, everything else. It's an incredible thing. It is an incredible blessing to be able to help other people out. And what happens is you just crave more and more of that.
Yeah.
I kind of loved magic because I looked at it from a sort of noble perspective of, before I was speaking, that it's like, oh, I get to share this unbelievable experience. You see, for me, when I experienced magic the first time, I went to a magic shop and this guy destroyed me. And I was just like,
what is reality? What just happened?
I remember thinking, I was 16. I remember thinking, why have I never seen this before? And I have to share this feeling with other people.
Yes, buddy. That's it.
And so to me, magic was about giving people, and still is, about giving people this incredible, one-of-a-kind experience that they will not have anywhere else. And so I look at it as this opportunity to, you talk about wonder in your show, is to share this experience of wonder and to help them forget the worries of the day. That's really like one of the reasons I love to entertain people is to help them forget about the worries of the day. And I look at that as something that is a noble thing to do, is that when entertainers can make you laugh or make you or amaze you or impress you or whatever, you're forgetting about the troubles of the day.
Absolutely.
And so I look at that as something that's just fantastic. And as I was speaking, and as I started to speak to people, now it's not that they're forgetting about their troubles. It's now instead it is, I am connecting with them and letting them know they are not the only person with that trouble.
Yeah. Gee whiz, man.
It's some heavy stuff. It's a heavy episode.
Well, but what a privilege though. I mean, what an absolute privilege to be able to do something that you love, that you would do anyway.
Yeah.
And to have that thing be important to others and impact them.
It is an unbelievable privilege that anybody wants to sit and either watch or listen to me do anything. I mean, we have only so much time,
right?
And we only, so the fact that people want to sit down and spend time with any of us is great.
Right. And everybody has a story that could impact others.
To share it. I think that's the thing, and that's the real thing, is that it took Stephen a long time to convince me that I needed to tell my story, because I didn't believe that my story should be told. I didn't want to talk about it. And my other friend Nelson, who's the one who finally convinced me to write the book, it took him years of trying to convince me that I needed to tell that story because you don't know how it's going to affect other people. But it's true.
Yeah.
I almost didn't write the book because I said, well, other people may not, and there are people who've written about having Tourette syndrome, but there are also other people who have written about success and things like that, which is the two themes of my book are about having Tourette syndrome and then the principles that I've learned to succeed with Tourette syndrome.
Right.
And so, and I tell a lot of stories about being a magician and some of the things that I've done traveling and sort of how all that works together. But yeah, I just lost my train of thought. I was going somewhere with that. It was.
You said it took a long time. Nelson was the one who finally convinced you to write the book, and because we were talking about everyone has a story, and it's worth sharing your story.
And that's ultimately what it comes down to: is that I had to realize that yes, there are other books out there that might have similar stories, but number one, there's nobody with my exact story, and there's no telling who's going to connect with my book that might not connect with it. Just because somebody else has written a book that may have similar themes doesn't mean that somebody out there is going to read that book.
Right.
Maybe they need to read my story.
Oh, that's good.
I mean, maybe, And so if you have a story that needs to be told, if you think you should tell your story, there's probably somebody out there that needs to hear it.
Yeah. And if you think that, but if you're constantly telling yourself no or trying to talk yourself out of doing it, there's a reason. You know what I mean? It's one thing if someone's like, I'm going to write a book because I'm the most important person. It's another thing for someone to go, I feel like I should write a book and I don't want to. That's probably the book I want to read. I want to read that book, you know?
Well, it's, I talk about in the book and in my talk, I talk a lot about belief, and so much of it is just getting past those limiting beliefs that we sometimes just harness on ourselves that really aren't even real.
Right.
It's just what we think.
Oh, yeah.
It's like, for me, the idea that I shouldn't tell my story, that was just in my head.
Yeah.
So
it's just an illusion.
True.
Right. Oh, I love it, man. I want to talk a little bit about what you're doing here now at House of Cards, but before we get into that, how can people find your book? How can they find what you're doing if they want to have you come speak?
Yeah.
Where do people get a hold of you?
So the easiest way is to go to my website, which is jasonmichaelsmagic.com. And that's Michaels with an S at the end. So jasonmichaelsmagic.com. And I have a link to the book. I have a whole page for the book that you can buy the book on Amazon.
Yeah.
But you can get it direct off my website. It'll just take you to Amazon. And my information about my talk is there. And different stuff that people need to see in order to, go, okay, I like what this is all about. The book itself is called "You Can Do the Impossible Too," and the idea is that magicians do the impossible,
right?
But also, and I, because I'm talking about magic throughout the whole book, so there's that magic theme there, but also it's really about the idea of a kid with Tourette syndrome stepping on stage, and there were certain people saying that would be impossible.
Yep.
But I did it, and I found this thing that I did so well.
Yeah.
And whatever your thing is that other people are telling you can't do not listen to that, because you can do, quote unquote, the impossible too, just like I did. So
I love that. Guys, make sure you go get Jason's book. And I'm sure even if you're listening right now, there's not just do you want to get a copy for yourself, but I'm thinking of a couple people I'd like to get a copy for, because I think that people need to see that they're not limited by whatever their circumstance is. Right. And that, they've got something important to give to the world.
Oh, absolutely.
Not to be held back by anything.
Absolutely. There are so many people that need to hear a message of hope. They need to know that they're not the only ones dealing with troubles.
Yeah, buddy. Oh, that's great. Well, I know people are going to see this and they're going to want to have you talk about where we're at. So let's talk about, how did you end up here in this amazing... I mean, I walked downstairs. I had seen pictures online. First of all, there's a no photo policy, so there's limited views online.
Right.
And I knew it was going to be cool.
Yeah.
But when I walked in here, I was like, they did it. They made Wonderland. Like, this place is...
It's unbelievable.
Incredible. Tell people who haven't heard, what is House of Cards, and so where are we right now?
House of Cards is the brainchild of Bill Miller. Bill and Shannon Miller created this, and they... Bill is, he's a lover of magic, and he fell in love with magic when he was a kid, actually because of the Magic Castle, brunch.
Yep.
He attended when he was a kid, and he just fell in love with it. And he lives, he lives in Nashville now, and, he owns several museums. He owns the Johnny Cash Museum, the Patsy Cline Museum, and they had this large space in their building, and that they wanted to do something with it, and they were going to do some sort of a speakeasy type of a restaurant.
Right.
And through some conversations that he had, it's sort of like the synchronistic type of events where you just run across somebody, and for some unknown reason you start talking about something, and then you're like, wait a minute, maybe this was meant to be.
Maybe this was supposed to be.
Yeah. So through some of those events, he got the idea that maybe it should be a magic speakeasy.
Yeah.
And so he spared no expense. He knew what he wanted to do, and he wanted to do it right. Yeah. And he created this stunningly beautiful, and it's so detailed. I think the thing that really overwhelms people is when they're looking around, the attention to detail here is unbelievable.
Oh, absolutely.
So he created this beautiful, beautiful speakeasy restaurant and magic venue where you can experience close-up magic the way that it should be experienced. You can experience a show in a showroom where, that is a half an hour long show with different magicians. We're in you're one of the guys coming in from out of town. In addition to having some folks here locally within the Middle Tennessee area that we call on and are very fortunate to have, we also are bringing in magicians from out of town. And my role here is as the entertainment director, and I'm one of the magicians, so I perform here, and I love it. It's so cool. The best part for me, since I'm from this area, the best part for me is that I feel like because of Bill and Shannon, and because of House of Cards, we have the opportunity to educate Nashville on what great magic is.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Isn't that one of the frustrations of magicians?
Oh, you spend 30 minutes of an hour show just trying to get them to realize it's not a, birthday party clown show.
Right.
It's, there are some great birthday party clowns, but I'm saying, like, there's more to magic than what you see joked about on TV.
Exactly. And so they have just created this. It is like a wonderland for magic. It really is. Because
it really is.
When you walk in, I mean, the art, we're talking about, this is literally, it is like a museum that is also a restaurant and a show place. I mean, because if you look at all the different art, all the different
Blackstone's tuxedo is here, and
exactly. Yeah.
I mean, so you would have like a set of bouts of books in certain venues. There'd be decorative books, and I'm looking at this cabinet and I'm going, oh, those are cool looking books, and I'm like, wait, that's that book? That's Robert Houdin? That's like all these books that I'm like, I've never been able to read these because you can't find them anywhere.
Exactly.
And all the pillars in the building have a collection of very rare playing cards. And
absolutely. I believe, I'm pretty sure that this is one of the rarest collections of playing cards there is. There's a playing card here from 1490. Now, how does that make your head blow off?
Crazy.
It is crazy. It's insane. So, you have all this incredible, and it's all this incredible collection that is just beautifully displayed.
Oh yeah.
Just throughout this entire place. So really, for a magician or for anybody who likes magic, it's a playland. But for what's really amazing is that for audiences or for normal people who might not know virtually anything about magic.
Right.
Not only do the magicians and the performances educate them, but these people get to come down here and they get to see the rich history literally on the walls and on the pillars. And I mean, it's this incredible place where all of a sudden, I think you come in here. Now, I'm a little, obviously I'm biased because I'm a magician and I work here.
Right.
But I think just normal everyday Joe walks in here and is blown away, and because they've never thought about the art and the craft and how rich the history is.
Right. It really is an invitation into the world of magic, to get to experience some of the things that got us excited about magic in the first place.
Yes.
And I just want to say, and I know you are a big part of this place coming together, and you're booking the magic and making it happen. And I feel the same way about the Castle, which I love and is my home club.
Absolutely.
And the Chicago Magic Lounge is doing some great things. There's these places that are around that are putting magic at the forefront. They are the star of the night. And being a guy who does this full time, and often you go and you're the surprise act. Magic is always a part of another event.
Right.
It's great to have a place like this where people come and they came here just to see magic and to be amazed and have fun.
I'm just crazy fortunate that I'm getting to participate in it. It's kind of crazy. You kind of sit there and you kind of kick yourself and say, "Really? I got to share my opinion on how this should work here. This is so cool."
Oh, it's the best. It's the best. Well, thank you for what you're doing, man.
Oh, absolutely. And I think it's an amazing time in magic too, because we do have more now. House of Cards and the Castle and these places, they're very rare.
Right.
However, there are more now than there have been in a long time that I know of.
Yeah.
So.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. It's wonderful. Guys, if you're anywhere near Nashville, or even if you're not, get a plane ticket. They're cheap. Go on southwest.com.
We've had quite a few people come here specifically to experience what it is.
Oh, I mean, Nashville is already a great spot, but now that this place is here, you got to come. You got to check it out, and you got to experience it firsthand. And the food's delicious.
Yeah, yeah. Oh no, it's fine. I mean, it's fine dining. It's very sophisticated.
Yep.
It's dress code. I mean, this is you come here because you want to have a special experience.
Yeah.
It's not something you just kind of throw together. It's something that it's a special night when you come here. It's gonna be something you remember.
That's great, man. Well, thanks for letting me come and play.
Oh, man.
Thanks for doing this show.
Absolutely. Well, I was excited that you wanted to do it. And then I got to see you actually work last night for the first time. And oh my gosh, it was so much fun. And your show, I was talking to somebody today and they're like, well, what's your show like? I said, it's like this like really strong magic, but it's super like intellectual. Like you really have to you're really into it. And like, it's great. Good stories. No, I'm glad you came down. Thanks for coming.
Oh, thanks, man. Thank you. Guys, go check out Jason's website, go get his book, buy one for a friend, and make plans right now to come check out House of Cards. Thank you, sir.
Absolutely.